Hey everyone, this is my quick recap for the main card of UFC 229. I made a completely separate video covering the excellent fight and ridiculously awful aftermath of the main event. If you want to see my coverage of the championship fight between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor and the subsequent fucking chaos that was recorded immediately after, so it doesn't cover any particular aftermath that may have happened at the press conference or any of that shit, you can refer to that video. This is the less dramatic but still absolutely excellent other four fights on the main card of UFC 229. This whole show was amazing, even all the way up to the bell ringing on the championship fight. I had a fucking blast. I'm a little bit drained afterwards because it wasn't really cool with the outburst by Nurmagomedov and the riot afterwards, but like I said, I covered that in a different video. Let's just get to the good news, because all of these fights were great. We start off with the Michelle, the karate hottie, Watterson beating Felice Herrig. I wasn't sure Watterson could win this one. She's really impressive, but she's actually an undersized strawweight. She's a true atomweight. And sometimes when she faces real top shelf competition, she kind of gets beat back. She's sort of a journeyman gatekeeper. But that was not the case. Now, a lot of people thought that it would be Watterson's kicks needing to keep Herrig at bay. Herrig is another very beautiful woman. However, she's a big, jacked, just ripped, very physically strong and muscly strawweight. However, that meant nothing. She got embarrassed by Michelle Watterson. Even though she scored a couple takedowns, she could do nothing to control Watterson, and Watterson beat her ass from the back. Fearlessly, just stabbing elbows, beautiful shit. Almost cut Herrig up. Herrig didn't win a single round of that fight, and Michelle Watterson beat her at her own game. There were some kicks, but mostly it was Michelle Watterson taking Herrig down, throwing Herrig, controlling Herrig in the clinch, beating Herrig at her own game, and making her look terrible. Watterson embarrassed Herrig. She had, I think, a 10-8 second round maybe on both of the scorecard, or 2 out of 3 scorecards, I should say. Bad showing for Herrig. Great showing for the karate hottie. God, she's gorgeous. Here's my pick for fight of the night. This should win fight of the night. This should win knockout of the night. This should win fucking fighter of the year. Derek the Black Beast Lewis is a true American hero. I fucking love this guy. He completely made up for his embarrassing showing against Francis Ngannou, where he still won because Ngannou was a coward and Derek's back is murdering him slowly. But he apparently had done some rehab before this fight on his back, even though he got slammed in round 2. Volkov slammed the shit out of him. His back looked fine. But for 2 rounds, Alexander Drago Volkov, who's like 6'7", long, one of the fastest, most technical, most fucking striking, proficient heavyweights you've ever seen. You know, he beat the fucking shit out of former champion Fabricio Verdum. I picked Volkov to win this fight despite my love for Derek Lewis, because I thought Lewis was fucked. I thought he's fighting a younger guy, a faster guy, a longer guy, a guy who matches his power and doesn't have an injured back. And we'll get to that, but round 1, Volkov is punching the shit out of Lewis. Lewis, in typical madman fashion, you know, his cardio is incredibly suspect. This is a man who probably cuts 20 pounds to make the heavyweight limit. He's gigantic. But still, you know, even though he has incredible, you know, bad cardio issues, the man will still throw head kicks in round 1 because he's a fucking madman. But Volkov's landing just huge looping uppercuts, big haymakers. I think he injured both of Lewis's eyes. He might have broke his right or left orbital, or maybe both. But whatever it was, Lewis was hurt early. And Volkov wouldn't pull the trigger. He was scared because a couple of times, you know, at first he was tentative and just kind of jabbing at him as Lewis covered up. And he even knocked Lewis down, I think, once or twice. But he was really afraid, you know, respected at the very least, might be a nicer way of putting it. He respected Lewis's power. And Lewis did hit him hard a couple of times when Volkov was coming in to maybe try to finish him off. And in the second round, he hit Volkov so hard that he knocked Volkov's mouthpiece out. And it's possible, Joe Rogan at least thinks so, that Volkov was hit so hard he forgot that that was his mouthpiece And when Herb Dean handed him his own mouthpiece, he handed it back to Herb Dean thinking that it was either Lewis's mouthpiece or that Herb Dean was supposed to put it in his mouth. Or I don't know what happened. But he got rocked multiple times. But, Volkov is also a trooper. By round 3, he has hurt... Volkov has hurt Lewis to the body multiple times with teep kicks. Lewis has shown a bad susceptibility to body shots. So he took advantage of that. Volkov clearly did his homework. Volkov hit him really hard in the face, overhands, uppercuts, straights, 1-2 combos. It was just lighting Lewis up. But every once in a while, when he gave Lewis the chance, Lewis would come around with a huge right hook that just sends Volkov backpedaling. But Volkov was kind of getting on his bicycle and running away. He was up 2 very strong rounds, possibly a 10-8 in either round 1 or round 2 or both. Lewis was screwed. Lewis's corner at the end of round 2, in between 2 and 3, was saying, look, you got to chase this guy. You got to run. This is the biggest fight of your career. If you want this, you're going to have to chase him, and you're going to have to throw as hard as you can, as much as you can. You have to knock this guy out. And so I'm watching, kind of depressed, because Lewis shows multiple signs of life and gets real close to fucking up Volkov, but Volkov seems fine. And then with 20 seconds left on the clock, Volkov gets a little too complacent. And Volkov's kind of got a hands-down pawing style because he's very, very long, doesn't really respect the reach of his opponents. And Derek Lewis's reach is not short. He just kind of fights short in Tyson style. But he can reach if he needs to. And believe me, he didn't have to reach for this punch. Absolutely Henderson H-bombs this guy again. Just ducks and bullows that shit around. And just wham! Knocks the mouthpiece out a second time. Rolls Volkov's eyes back into his head and jumps on him and pounds the shit out of him. He knocked Volkov into the next fucking dimension. He engunned Volkov. Just nuclear annihilation. And Derek Lewis is basically your number 1 contender, ladies and gentlemen. The guy with no cardio, only okay wrestling, not a whole lot of kicks, although he will throw them fearlessly. They're not great, mostly due to his physiology, not lack of technique. And, with slow punches, but with such nuclear power, with such a strong chin, and with just the most undeniable heart, Derek Lewis beat number 5 Volkov as number 2 Derek Lewis. Who would have fucking thunk it? The man is a killer. Of course, after winning, proceeds to strip his trunks off, leaving himself only with his jocks, and lays down in the ring, exhausted and drenched in an ocean of sweat, with just the most gutsy performance of the year. It's hilarious. Joe Rogan puts the microphone up to him as, Derek Lewis, why'd you take your pants off, man? Lewis grabs microphone. Because my balls was hot. Never change, Derek. Never change. When asked who Derek Lewis wants next and what's next for him in his career, he responded he wanted to come to California, go on the Joe Rogan experience, and, quote, smoke weed with you. To which Rogan laughed and said, I would love to. And that ends the happy story of the night. St. Preux versus Reyes was Ovince St. Preux, who's I think number 7, facing newcomer but undefeated lethal fucking striker, Mr. Matrix, Dominic the Dominator Reyes. I've only seen him fight once, and it was a dominating performance. I don't know a whole lot about this guy. I've seen St. Preux, Mr. Von Fluchoke, with a great left hand, very sharp, dual stance striking. I thought this one was a good one, but Vegas had it right. They had, I think, Reyes as like a 4 or 5 to 1 favorite to beat St. Preux. And he beat St. Preux's ass. It was kind of forgettable. I was kind of worn out after the Lewis fight. St. Preux did fight pretty admirably. He fought back. He was brave. But Reyes made him look like a chump. Ovince St. Preux, one of the best lightweights in the world, a phenomenal guy, and he is a fighter's fighter. The dude fights like 4 or 5 times a year, even if he gets his arm broken and shit. He's there to make money and kick ass, and I love OSP, but Reyes made him look amateurish. That's how good Reyes is. We'll see more of him in the future. We'll see how Reyes handles some even better strikers as he moves up the ladder. And we'll see if Reyes' kind of T-Rex arms cause him any trouble. Probably not, because in combination with Reyes' T-Rex arms, he has ballerina legs. He can kick you from downtown. And he threw about 1 billion head kicks at OSP and hit him with 2 or 3 of them. And kind of kicked his ass. But we'll move on to the other potential fight of the night. Ferguson v. Pettis. Tony El Kukui Ferguson is a lunatic. He is not a human being. He is an animal. He is a vampire bat that has been cleverly shaved and had his wings clipped off. Because holy shit, dude, this dude isn't human. For those of you who don't know or do know, we'll cover this again. He was supposed to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov back in April, tripped over a cable at a press conference, and tore the ever-loving shit out of his knee. I think he tore both his PCL and MCL, separated both ligaments from the bone of his knee. That's the kind of shit that you may never come back from. And it's also the kind of shit that you take about a year to rehab from, if not, at least 9 months. Here we are, 6 months after the event. Tony Ferguson did not get physical rehab. He just got surgery, and with about 4 weeks after surgery, with his bandages still taped all over his leg, he was training. The man is not human. Tony Ferguson is not a human being. He is something more. He's an X-Men mutant. Now, Anthony Pettis, his opponent, is, he had a bad showing a few months ago against Dustin Poirier, but has bounced back with another big win. Anthony Pettis is one of the most exciting fighters not named Tony Ferguson in the lightweight division. I love both of these guys. I would have been happy no matter who won, but I did want a Cinderella story victory for Tony Ferguson. As much of a cringy villain as he is, I love him as a fighter. And Anthony Pettis came in as heavy as I've ever seen Pettis. It looks like he put on weight for the express purpose of just bullying and generating power. I've never seen Anthony Pettis look this big. Anthony Pettis was always a small lightweight who appeared to cut almost, probably not hardly any weight to make lightweight. And he did fight several fights at featherweight where he looked like he's a natural featherweight. Here he is 3 fights later, back up at lightweight, and he looks big. Like, he was way bigger than Tony Ferguson. Definitely put on weight, packed on some power muscle, and showed it. Round 1, Pettis is hurting Ferguson. No shame, goes straight for that injured leg and kicks the shit out of it. Ferguson's limping early. But Ferguson is also punching and kicking Pettis back and injuring him back by kicking him with his injured leg and hurting Pettis' leg. Ferguson using his unbelievably long fucking tentacle reach. He's a hentai creature, and just whacking him from downtown. They get into some crazy grappling exchanges, and on one of these breaks, he even tries one of those rolling Imanari rolls and tries to grab, I forget if this happened in round 1 or 2, I forgot, I should have wrote it down, but he does one of these Imanari rolls, I think at the end of round 1, and Pettis just lands on top of him. It's so brave to roll and try to wrap your legs around a guy from the fucking ground. When you're dealing with Anthony Pettis, that's not usually the kind of jiu-jitsu expert that you want to try that shit on. Round 2, I think, it might have been the start of round 1. I think it happened in round 2. Yeah, it was round 2. Oh, by the way, at the end of round 1, Ferguson rocks Pettis by doing a video game jump off the cage Superman punch. Madness. Absolute fucking madman. Showtimes him with the punch this time. Fucking at the end, towards the beginning of round 2, Pettis blocks some of Ferguson's kicks, and then proceeds to fire off, with his newfound power, a huge, just freight train right hand, bashes Ferguson right in the nose, and we don't find out until, the end of round 2, though. Hits Ferguson so fucking hard, he breaks his own hand. Ferguson practically backflips with the power of this punch. Like it's a video game. Pettis shows no mercy, dives on him, hammer fists like crazy. Ferguson tries to get up, gets back-fisted. And I forgot to mention that Pettis did rock Ferguson with a back fist in round 1 as well. Fucking dives on top of Ferguson, and at some point, right as he dives on him, Ferguson unleashes his knives. The man doesn't have hentai-tentacles for arms. He doesn't have monkey arms like McGregor. He actually has secret fucking stabbing weapons. For Tony Ferguson is actually a T-1000 up to this point on his arm. These are knives. And gashes Pettis from here to fucking here. And everyone thought the right hand that Pettis had just landed like 5 seconds previously was the source of all this blood, because as he falls into Ferguson's guard and they're hugging face to face, all you see is just like the fucking elevator scene from The Shining, just blood, 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 just blood fucking everywhere. And we thought, that's blood coming from Ferguson's mouth. Sorry, Tony, that was Pettis bleeding into your mouth. Well, I thought maybe there was blood coming from his nose. No, that was Pettis bleeding into your nose. And then we thought there was blood coming from Ferguson's eyes. But no, that was Pettis bleeding into Ferguson's eyes. Tony, I'm so sorry. That had to suck. Pettis, at first, wasn't afraid of this cut and was in fact going like, I'm in it to win it, can't quit. You know, both of these guys were jaw-jacking and laughing and just having the time of their lives in there. Fighters, fans, fighters, even more so. Great show. But when it gets back to the feet, Ferguson starts landing his right hand and some power stance switching kind of power lefts, like these kind of stance switch into just wham bam, and I don't know what you call him. I don't know his technique. Ferguson's way outside of my expertise, but his footwork is so crazy that you can't tell what's his lead hand, because he switches like he's doing the salsa. It's crazy. But he gets Pettis backed up, and Pettis gets another even worse cut. Well, I guess equally as bad, because he's cut like this, top of his head, and then his I'm just doing this backwards. Cut like this back on his right side, and then cut across his left eye from like here to here, and then cut across the nose, and then cut across the lip. And by the end of round 2, it looks like a gang of hooligans took knives to the face of Anthony Pettis. He was just blood, blood, blood. He was bloody down to his ankles. His white trunks were pink with the shit. And the doctor's stoppage was not for the cuts, but because when he had knocked down Ferguson with the nuclear right hand, he'd shattered his fucking hand, probably broke it in multiple places. And Duke Rufus, his trainer, his coach, said he can't continue. And it was the right move, because Ferguson was going to kill him. And Ferguson, fearless up to the cage walkout, showboat, laughing, fearless, never once sounded scared, but once he was announced that he was the victor, that he had survived a potentially career-ending freak accident, came back, beat one of the best in the world, he broke down in tears. The tears of a fucking champion. We will see Ferguson again, and he'll fight for the belt. He'll fight for the belt for sure, his next fight. So that was the co-main event. Now, you can see in another video I have recorded what happens after this. A phenomenal championship fight, a dominant performance by Khabib that ends in a goddamn riot. With people sucker punching McGregor, with Khabib probably going to get fined, possibly suspended, fired, stripped of the title. I don't know. I'll just tell you that Khabib did leave the champion, and he left the octagon the champion, not with the belt put around his waist. Dana White refused to do that, but did not immediately strip him. But we'll see. I might have to do a third video tomorrow covering press conferences and Fallout, if you care to watch those. But if you want a detailed breakdown of Khabib's masterful performance before he ruined his career, refer to the video. Links will be in the description. Link in the description to that one, to this one, and this one to that one. Companion pieces. Thanks for watching, everybody.